Hello, good morning. Welcome to our review of Ant-Man and the Wasp. We are live. The embargo's up. Roth, we can now talk about the third installment of the MCU this year.
Yes.
This half year.
20th in the universe.
That's right.
Yeah.
Ant-Man and the Wasp hits theaters in a couple weeks. Roth, just to kick things off, general thoughts, what'd you think?
You know, this is very fresh. We both saw it last night.
Yes.
I would describe this as, I really liked Ant-Man, and I think I liked it more than most people, so I was probably predisposed to enjoy this movie. I would describe it as a very enjoyable, joyful romp episode almost in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which more and more starts to feel as if it is, I mean, certainly it's a series, but it starts to feel like a series properly in the way that a television show is a series, where these really are threads, continuous threads for these characters that have a place in this movie, but they don't necessarily have the ABC arc that we would expect from another standalone film. And pieces of me think that's okay.
I'm with you. I'm a bigger fan of Ant-Man, the first one, I think, than a lot of people were. I really liked that movie.
I did too.
I thought this one was okay. It was fun. It's one of the funniest movies in the MCU. I mean, it's got the jokes. I laughed a lot, which is great. I think that, if I'm being honest, is maybe a little forgettable. I think in the long run, part of it I think has to do with the fact that you're right that it's a standalone episode, and going in, I was kind of looking forward to the fact that it was sort of hopefully going to be unencumbered by a lot of the heavy lifting that so many, because certainly Infinity War had the weight of just literally the universe on its shoulders, both cinematically and in the film itself, the universe. This one I thought juggled so many things. I think maybe they, in the script, they were very funny, but they also, wrote, I think, maybe one story too many, because you're jumping between all of these things, and I felt like it didn't really do justice to any of them in a way. So this is a fun movie. It's a funny movie, but looking at it kind of big picture, I think it's maybe one of the more sort of like entertaining but not that memorable movies.
I think that the stakes in this movie are one of the interesting things, because they're both very large and very small. Yes, and so is but they are, because they're not sort of about saving the world, right?
Yeah.
They're very specified. Like, it is life and death stakes, but it's for it is familial. It is about the ones that you love on an individual basis. So it really isn't a movie about heroism so much as relationships. And the trick there was that they were dealing with a lot of different kinds of relationships: friendships, romantic, parental, on a number of different levels. I will say there are some that little girl that plays his son, his daughter,
that's a performance.
It's early, folks. Is Academy Award-winning casting. She is adorable.
She's a cute little girl.
She just walks away with my heart in this movie.
Okay.
Michael Pena as well, once again, delivers a standout comedic performance.
His sequences when they kind of go to him, and there's a couple times in the movie where they sort of just kind of give the movie to him for a few minutes. That for me was some of the, as kind of was the case in the last movie, some of the funniest pieces of this movie, when they just kind of let him go and let his comedic sensibilities take over. His character continues to be a standout, not only in this franchise, but in the universe as a whole.
Well, what's interesting about that too, it's really thrown into sharp relief, because there's a couple of moments in the film that we pause for exposition. And this is actually a trait of Peyton Reed's, where he plays with the idea that I'm really just going to roll into this and do exposition. I'm just going to do it in a way that's playful. There's one moment with one of the villains, and there's one moment with Michael Pena. Far and away, the exposition sequence with Michael Pena works.
Right.
And the one with the villain, because she is a bit, and this isn't really anybody's fault. It's sort of the nature of what the character is experiencing. She's a bit one note. So there's a button on that sequence that really works.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I think it's the movie's fault in the sense that you have, like I said, you're essentially juggling between 4 stories in this movie. You've got what's going on with Paul Rudd and Scott Lang and sort of the fallout from his choices in Civil War. You have the search for Hank Pym's wife, Janet Van Dyne, or Janet Pym, either way, in the quantum realm, and trying to figure out how are we going to do this. That was set up at the last film. You have the story of Ghost, who's the new villain in this film, and then you also have Walton Goggins playing this sort of, kind of crime boss, guy that they're in business with.
Crime boss who has a boss.
Crime boss who has a boss, but and I was expecting one or all of these stories to sort of dovetail together and kind of come together into one sort of climax, or just sort of figure out a way to tie all these stories together. And throughout the film, they all just sort of competed with each other.
Yeah.
And so I think the issues with Ghost, and I think it's a fine performance, I think it's a fine character, not fine as in like fine isn't good, is that it's competing so much with the other things in the movie that she's one note because they don't really invest that much time other than here's her history and here's why she's angry.
I would agree.
Instead of like maybe doing a bit of a deeper dive into that character, because you don't have time, because you have to jump over here, you got to jump over here, you got to jump over here.
Yeah, I think everybody suffers a little bit as a result, including Walton Goggins, who is one of my favorite actors, and he becomes a little bit. It's a good performance, but because we're spending so little time with him, it becomes a little bit arch. But I would say this, that the arcs aren't as fulfilled as they might be, and I think that what Peyton Reed is relying on is that thematically all of these different threads besides Walton Goggins, who's really there to drive, sort of move the MacGuffin around.
He's there to jump into cars and go,
literally
get him!
Move the MacGuffin around sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah.
But is this, that they're thematically similar enough that I think that what they're hoping is you get it. It's about parents and children. And in her case, it's about that too. And it's also about like identity and the loss of oneself, literally, the way Michelle Pfeiffer's character is too. Also with Michelle Pfeiffer, there's something that happens in the film for her that is entirely unexplained. And that's why, I really feel that this is an episode in a larger series, which they know, and they really accept that now, so they don't feel the onus to sort of fulfill everything in one film. They know they'll be back. They know they'll be touching on this again. There's good to that. There's bad to that.
Yeah.
As a moviegoer, if you really are just going to watch Ant-Man and you're not watching the rest of the MCU, there's some threads that won't necessarily ultimately be fulfilled for you. But I think it's a very, very funny movie. He once again uses what Ant-Man and the Wasp can do physically in terms of the action sequences very, very well. I really liked her. I think that the arcs that worked the best for me were Hope and her father.
Yeah, Evangeline, Lilly, and Michael Douglas for me were the
best part of the movie.
Best parts of the movie. Paul Rudd's funny.
He's hilarious.
That's why they hired him, and he's funny. But I felt like the best work in the film was done by Evangeline Lilly
I agree.
And Michael Douglas.
Because they're living in this world and they're grounded in this world. In total, I would recommend this movie. I think it's a really fun movie to watch. It's very, very funny. It's enjoyable. If you liked Ant-Man, it's more of the characters that you enjoy. They are the best part for me. But it falls short of being a complete film in the way I think the first Ant-Man really was. It was a complete standalone story, and this one is a thread in a larger story. Yeah, it's a fun thread. It's a happy thread.
It's a happy thread. Like I said, it's really funny. If you're going to get a lot of laughs, you're gonna get a lot of laughs. There's a lot of great comedic work in the movie from a bunch of different characters. Randall Park is in the movie playing kind of a government agent. I'm a big fan of his, and he did some really great work. There's it's not just the main cast. The supporting cast is really funny. So as a comedy, I think it succeeds really, really well. I think if you like the first Ant-Man, if you're obviously a fan of the MCU, then yes, I think you will enjoy this movie. Overall, I don't think it's as strong as the first one. Not that it should be compared to it necessarily. That shouldn't be where it rests or lies. Is it as good as the first Ant-Man? I don't think that it was. I think it's more scattered than the first one. It is a bit overstuffed. I do think the storytelling leaves a little bit to be desired. And like I said, if I were, it's more forgettable to me. That's the word that kind of comes to me is not forgettable in a bad sense as far as like there was nothing in it for me to love. Like there has been with some recent movies, but I think more in the sense of just like, it's not when you get 20 movies in, you get stratified.
Yeah.
And you have movies that are outstanding and memorable and that you're going to return to. And then you have movies that are just kind of floating there in the middle. This one was one of those for me. So
you also, just to let you guys know, you will have to suspend. I mean, look, in comic book movies, you're going to be suspending disbelief a little bit more than you would in, say, a drama. However, you're really going to have to suspend some disbelief here in terms of the ways that, like, ants behave.
That was the least troublesome aspect for me.
And you're really, really going to have to think of this. It is a very heightened film. It is very theatrical in the sense that it's disconnected from how the physical world works, as much as they use the word quantum physics.
And the word quantum, which they then, of course, point out inside the movie.
Yeah, it's an inside joke in the movie. And I would agree with you in terms of like it doesn't work as well as a standalone, as well as the first Ant-Man did. But if you're watching these in terms of episodes in the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe, and the last episode left you a little bummed out, this episode is a more playful and fun one, and it succeeds very well in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah, fun.
Fun. It's fun, a good time
funny,
at the theater.
Good time.
It's that's exactly what it is. And that's okay sometimes.
That's okay sometimes. Well,
right.
Roth, that's it. That's our thoughts on Ant-Man and the Wasp. You can check it out week after next, I think, in the theaters. July, maybe, I don't know. It's early. I can't do math this early.
I can't do math this early either. We haven't had our coffee yet, so forgive us for that a little bit. I'm going to go have my coffee right now. We're going to be back with some spoiler talk about this film because there are some things to discuss in that regard that you'll want to dig into, and you'll let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Did it feel scattered to you? Did it feel like it was not as strong an entry as the first? Did it feel like just a light episode in a larger series of films? Or was it something else entirely? Let us know in the comments, and we will see you again in 1 hour and 1/2.